Yes, guys, what's good? You're tuned into Mango Masala, Pi Radio South Asian show. My name's Gerns, and I'm here with the director and leading cast of God's Men. So we've got Waheed, Ali, and Hamza here. How are you all doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good,
Yeah,
thanks.
I'm good, thank you.
First of all, I know obviously we've had Hamza on the show before, but do each of you maybe want to just give us a little bit of background about yourself and what your role in regards to this film is?
Yeah, I'm Waheed. I've been writing, directing films probably for the last 15, 20 years now. Of God's Men was second feature-length film. Finished directing in 2022, I think it was, and finished editing last year. And world premiering at Manchester Film Festival in a couple of weeks.
I'm Ali. I'm an actor from Manchester. I graduated in 2021, and Of God's Men was like my first ever feature film that I've been a part of.
I'm Hamza Medley, actor, musician, and like Ali, yeah, Of God's Men was my first feature film as a lead. Been acting since I was 16, and yeah, this came together beautifully. I'm happy to be here to chat to you.
Nice, definitely very happy to that. All three of you are here taking the time to speak to me today, and thank you also for obviously giving me the privilege of being able to watch this as well before chatting to you. So it's really nice to be able to reflect on it properly and like discuss it with you today. Waheed, I'll come to you first. Obviously, you are the director behind this film. I was just interested if you could maybe give us just a little bit of a brief summary for people that don't know too much about it, and then also how the actual film came about, like what inspired it.
Yeah, I mean, the film itself, it's about a couple of brothers who are sort of like forced to live with each other, and both of them have just these very opposing views on life and the way they live. And the film is pretty much based around that conflict between the two brothers. That's kind of all it was. How would two people who have opposing views react when they're forced to sort of live with each other? But for me, ultimately, it was about making a film that I could relate to in a sense. I find it very difficult to watch films where I can relate to the story and relate to the characters because I hardly ever see stories and characters told from the community that I come from. So for me, it was a case of what if like what kind of film do I want to see? What kind of film stories do I want to see on screen? Because I was kind of tired of everything that I have been watching. And it was just a case of getting that down on screen and showing something that could easily be taking place in my community. And that is mainly, I come from a community of mainly South Asians, Pakistanis. Very rarely do you get people from these areas getting to tell their stories. I mean, even this, to be honest, no one wanted to offer any support for it. It's something that we all did off our own back, something that we all did for the love of the story. And it wasn't really a case of where's this going to end up? It was just a case of this is something we all want to be a part of because we all feel like we have something to say.
No, I'm really glad that you did stick with it and that the end product has obviously turned out really well. So Hamza and Ali, obviously you play Amin and Seth respectively. When it came to auditioning for roles, was it that you were auditioning for specific roles, or was it just an open call to be involved in the film? Like, how did it come about for you guys?
A mate sent it to me through Facebook, like an acting friend. I sent it for the role of Seth. The whole audition process was so like new to me because we did like I sent a self tape, right, and then he got back to me saying like I saw the self tape, but do you want to like hop on Zoom and have a chat? And like just that open conversation, like that's never happened before. Like you don't ever like send a self tape and you get something back from the director going, do you want to jump on Zoom and have a chat about it? Like so, just from the get go, that was so refreshing to see, and I think that helped as well so much just to have that open conversation.
Pretty much the same as Ali. I think it was on Twitter, one of my friends, Sahar, she sent me. If I'm not mistaken, I had a few emails with Waheed here and there. One thing I do remember is that in my head, when I was reading it, I was very much wanting to play the character that Ali's playing, because I just felt I related to that one a lot more. I felt like it would be easier for me to do, but when I had the chat with Waheed over Zoom, it turned out that he was looking at me to play the role of Amin, which I found quite interesting. So I had to go back to square one and actually like read the whole script again. I think I've got the notes here somewhere, but I literally just wrote notes on the character, what I thought about him, what his journey was, random stuff that I thought would relate to it. And it turns out after that process, I actually related to him a lot more than I thought at the start.
I find it really interesting that you've said that, because actually when I was watching the film, when I'm first introduced to Amin, even in the first couple of scenes, I was like, wow, because obviously I've met and interviewed you before. I was like, this really seems like very much like a lot more arrogant and a lot more forward, like very harsh type of character compared to the person that I've met and interviewed before. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting to see you in a different light. So it's interesting how you also saw that at first when reading the script as well. And I mean, it kind of takes me to my next question, which was, obviously you've kind of answered this already, Hamza, but like, in what ways do you two kind of see yourselves in your characters? Like, how much do you relate to them? And Waheed as well, actually, obviously, because you've come up with these characters, like, was there any kind of self-reflection in there, or was it purely drawing on acting or imagination when you were bringing these characters to life?
It was pretty much just how opposite can these two people who normally you'd look at, a couple of brothers and you think they're very similar to each other. And there is some kind of you can draw on it from some personal experiences. But it wasn't too much of that. It was more the themes. Each sort of character represented a theme to me. And in this day and age, it was almost like, does that theme and does that character have a place in today's world almost? Like you can look at them as more than just a character. You can look at one who is striving for, a simple and religious life, whereas the other one wants all the worldly attention and what he can get in the here and now. And that kind of interested me. And it was like, how can I represent those themes as characters?
And also as well, watching it was interesting for me personally as well, because I grew up with two sisters, and in terms of my friendship group, I'm mostly friends with girls as well. So watching this brotherly relationship, from what I know, it seemed very portrayed very well, but it's weird, isn't it? That kind of brotherly relationship where even from the first time that they're meeting, after Surf has been in the hospital, at the beginning, their first instances, just like pushing him around, that kind of like...
Even that in itself, it's like, there's a playfulness to it, but underlying, there's just some tension there straight off the bat. There's like opposing views here. They don't even need to speak to each other, and just that shove in itself, it kind of represents that conflict, and you know what's to come. And then they get in the car after that, and it's just instantly conflict straight away.
Yeah.
There's never really, very rarely, a nice moment between the two throughout the film.
That's kind of accurate as well, I think, for a lot of male relationships, I think, unfortunately.
No, you're right. And funny thing is, Sabrina, the only female who worked on the film, after she read the script, that was the first thing she pointed out. She was like, "Oh, this is what it's just male toxicity." That's that, and it's kind of true in a sense. And I didn't really see that, funnily enough, until she pointed that out. And it's funny that you say that as well, man.
One thing that I found like quite good as well throughout the film was, although obviously covering quite a lot of serious topics, still managed to get those like funny moments in there as well. Like there was so many like little like gold nuggets throughout it that were just like, for example, the one that's come to my mind is the where it means like popping his head around the corner when Seth is trying to pray, and it's just so childish, but I think it's very realistic in terms of that like brotherly relationship of how they do kind of just revert back to kids sort of thing, and that sense of immaturity never really goes away, even though these are two grown men.
And that genuinely comes down to the performances that these two guys put on the screen. If it wasn't for that, like, it could be there on paper, but if you don't get the actors who can pull that off, and make things sound funny, it gives it a bit of like, it humanizes it in a sense. Like there's an element of seriousness. Sometimes you can look at something so serious and you just kind of can't help but laugh almost. And to me, that comes down to these two guys and the performances they put on the screen. You know what? These two guys, Hamza and Ali, You guys never met? Had never met before the film?
Yeah, just a little bit,
Yeah,
just through Instagram and stuff.
I think I knew of Ali, but never met him personally.
You know, there's films where they'll get the lead actors to come in and build like a chemistry with each other. These two guys, the first time they met was first day on set, like an hour before the first scene was shot, and it just worked. It just worked, and there was a process behind that, like, you know, going through all the auditions and everything. But and then obviously you get to the set and you just hope it's going to work, and it did. You know, it worked out, and anything like that that you see in the film, whether you feel any kind of emotion you feel throughout the film, whether it's laughing or whether it's sad or angry, it's down to these two guys and their performances.
Definitely. One thing as well that you cover throughout the film, always a recurring topic, is obviously Surf has been in hospital because he's tried to take his own life, which is the start of the movie, and I think we pick up like 6 months later afterwards. I think one thing that I really liked about the film as well was that it was a very key aspect of it, but it also didn't feel overdone. I do think sometimes films that focus on the topic of mental health kind of like narrow in and make it purely about this journey of self-discovery and getting well again, and it was nice to have a film that reflects on this and doesn't portray mental health in a negative light in terms of advocating for one's own mental health, but then it's still it's realistic is what I'm saying. So Ali, also, what was it like for you, obviously knowing from the start that your character was going to have had these issues and you were going to have to portray them?
To be honest, that's what actually drew me to the film, because it was like exploring his mental health. Unfortunately, it's like a sort of taboo subject. It's in our community and stuff, and it was just like how it didn't shy away from that subject, and how like you said, like how realistically it was handled. I related to it quite as well, because like I've struggled with my mental health, and like how this character is like, he internalizes his emotions, all of his emotion, like all of it's just bottled up inside. And that's what I do anyway. Like I really like, I don't ever like let anything out. Do you know what I mean? Like any frustration or anger. Do you know what I mean? And there's not like a moment throughout this film where he sort of gets that moment of like release. Do you know what I mean? Like that moment, like you can just let it all out. It's always just so bottled up. Obviously, like he doesn't have a lot of lines either. So I felt drawn to the character from the get go.
And Amin as well also seems to have this sense of insecurity, perhaps, about Seth thinking that he's better than him almost because he's so focused on praying. And I think there's also some conflict from before the film even starts as well. There's like a past there. Do you think there's a bit of both, in the sense that Seth does maybe think that he's does have that sense of high and mightiness maybe, but then also it's more Amin's insecurity as well? Do you think they're both at play there, or do you think it's more one or the other?
I think it's more insecurity than anything else. I think it's just complete insecurity. And one thing you need to remember as well, like these two brothers, obviously it's not highlighted in the film, but they obviously grew up together. And then there was a period of time where Amin left, and then they're seeing each other not only after he's come out of a mental health hospital or been sectioned or whatever, but there's years that they've missed between each other. So Amin has like this one way of understanding who his brother is, but obviously his brother's taken a different kind of path, and he's tried to process things in a different way, and that basically it triggers him. It triggers Amin because it reminds him of his dad, basically, who didn't have the greatest relationship with. There's a lot of insecurity there because I mean, you've obviously watched the film. He's trying to run away. He's trying to get to another place, trying to buy a house and all this kind of stuff. If someone's secure in themselves, I think they'll be able to have those conversations. But I don't think there's a point in the film where he actually stops and says to his brother, "Yo, what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need anything?" It's more of a case like, "What are you doing?" Do you know what I mean? Yeah, he's a lost little boy. That's the way I see him.
Yeah, it's true. I think the closest we see to maybe him showing any kind of vulnerability is, I think, one of two. I think when he's admits like that the owner of the shoe shop, he's like, I didn't like who was he to say that to you, sort of thing. That's what I was thinking. And then also obviously in Amin's final scene where he's actually like, I'm not ready, and gives him the keys. And we'll get on to talking about that, but yeah, it was nice, even if it was just those little glimpses, to see that when he's like at a certain point, he can also like open up at least just a tiny bit. But talking about themes running throughout the film, I think one that I got specifically was this idea of balancing faith with family relationships, and I think we see that as well with the clips that Surf is watching like throughout on his phone. I think a few of them are kind of touching on this, and it got me thinking as well, because I think watching the film at first, I'm a lot more of a reserved character, so I think I found myself like siding with Surf a lot more, because I was just like, why is Amin being so annoying, just leave him alone, sort of thing. But then afterwards, I started thinking, especially in regards to this like theme that I picked up, and I was like, do you guys think that actually maybe both of them maybe could have tried a little bit more, rather than it just being Amin should have not been so hostile towards him?
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's that, if we were talking about, it's that lack of open like conversation, and won't ever like just sit down and have a conversation. Like, how many problems could have been avoided if they just sat down and said like, are you okay? You need to talk to someone. I think that's just relatable to guys in general. Like, we could be fighting demons in our head, but we never like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think with Ali's character, like you were saying before, is all bottled in, whereas my character is the complete opposite end of the spectrum. He'll say what he's thinking, what he's feeling, for the most part, as long as it's antagonistic, I guess. But yeah, there is a balance that needs to be had, and I think the first part of finding that, whether you're on the introvert side or the extrovert side, is really just being honest with yourself and taking a minute to check yourself. Even just check yourself in with people that are going to have an opinion about you or towards you that you might not necessarily agree with. Sometimes it's humbling. Sometimes we're just a bit scared to get that humbling, to be able to grow as a person mentally, spiritually, whatever the case may be.
But I also find though as well with especially with Amin, for me it was always a sense of like, he almost sees some of himself in Saif as well, and maybe there's something there he sees in him that he can't ever sort of have himself, and that's where a bit of the animosity comes from as well. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, and then we see something that's so similar to ourselves that we end up just despising it. When writing it as well, a lot of that animosity towards Saif's character from Amin comes from that as well, is the fact that he sees something in him that he kind of relates to as well, but he's too egotistical to actually admit that. So the only way he can deal with that is by showing, this resentment almost to him.
And it's interesting as well, because I do think this lack of understanding and willingness to talk is actually what kind of sets off this domino effect that eventually leads to, unfortunately, spoiler alert for anyone that has yet to watch it, but Amin's demise as well, because essentially it's that disagreement, isn't it, at the shop, where they both want to take breaks at the same time. They can't agree on that, so then they have to stay late. But then Amin leaves early, leaving Saif behind with the shoes. He then decides to obviously give the shoes away to a homeless person, which leads to them both getting sacked, which then leads to them both embarking on this life of crime, more Amin than Surf, but still, which then obviously eventually leads to Amin losing his life. So it is sad that obviously that could have all been possibly avoided if they'd actually talked to each other.
And I think the film also just highlights the kind of environments that some people are in, because for some people that is literally the line that they're balancing between, you know what I mean? Like, one wrong decision might not necessarily end their life, but it could damage their career prospects or whatever they want to pursue in their life, do you know what I mean? And sometimes it's just a case of, if you don't have the right amount of privilege, you're struggling unless you make all the right moves at the right time.
I think you're definitely right in that sense of like privilege, because a lot of people in privileged positions, if they get fired from their job, they'd have like a bit of like a cushiony period where like, okay, fine, I've lost my job, but I can go and I can apply for others, I can rely on my parents, whatever. But obviously these two, at the end of the day, have only got each other. And then you see that Amin obviously is trying, he's going around to all these different places trying to get a job, and it's just not working out, which is why he then goes back to obviously that offer which he had at the beginning. I think as well, the fact that obviously the offer at the beginning, it's obviously can't condone it still, but it's an empty gun. So although it's still robbery, at least he's not hurting anyone. And then by the end of it, I mean, I forgot about this point as well, is that obviously Sif chucks away the gun as well, and then that leads to, I mean, actually using a knife, which then leads to him getting stabbed. So it's all so interlinked, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
but no, you're right though. It was everything. Everything just has a knock-on effect. Literally from the start, the moment that they meet each other, and you can just feel things. I don't know if you want to say escalating, but everything just carries on from one bit of one incident to the next. Even he steals. He finds the drugs in the car. Safe does, and then he hides them from his brother, and then his brother finds the drugs, and then and then it just builds and builds and builds until it's like, where else is this going to go? Like, how far is it going to go? And again, that just speaks about the characters never sort of like stopping and just saying, look, this is getting out of hand here. And in a way, that's like the biggest sort of connection between the two, is that neither of them ever stop each other and check on each other. And that for me was kind of like, in terms of similarities, like to personal life, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me personally, is that very rarely do family ever just check in on each other and be like, look, we need to just sit down and talk about this. And it was just a case of how far can it go, and obviously in this case, too far.
I wanted to ask as well about, besides the ending, I think one of the pivotal scenes in the film is the first robbery that Amin obviously commits, and Surface there as well. We never actually see the robbery take place, but then in between Amin going in and coming back out to the car, there's that pause point, and we see pretty much every single character, there's that pause, and we kind of like see each of them just like looking into the camera sort of thing. I just wanted to know that what was the thinking behind putting that pause there, rather than say later on where Amin loses his life sort of thing, which is arguably the one that I'd say that's probably the most important point of the film, because it's the demise of the lead character.
For me, that point onwards is the beginning of the end for me. That's where it actually starts going really downhill for both of them, because they're both in a position now where they don't know what they've done, and they don't know how to sort of move forward with it, and things can only get worse from here on in. And it's almost like they've bit off more than they can chew kind of thing, especially Amin's character. And Saif has just sort of been dragged into it. And you can see the demeanor of both of them. They're hiding out. And it wasn't a huge robbery, but it was big enough for the two of them. Like, I'll touch on the reason what, all the characters looking in the camera is because every interaction that they had with every one of those people, both of them, had led to that moment. And that moment there, that robbery, was probably the stupidest thing they could have done. Right. And like I said, it was the beginning of the end. Every interaction they had with them, with those characters, led to that moment. It wasn't just the interactions between the two of them. It was the interactions between all 8 of them, 9 of them. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes, that's the reality of it. You may come across someone and it sets off, what's it called, the butterfly effect or whatever. You might meet someone just for 2 seconds of the day, and something happens 5 hours later, and you're like, man, if I didn't bump into that person, this wouldn't have happened.
No, 100%. I definitely agree as well. Although I think that the obviously it was from the point at which I think it was like the break disagreement is maybe where things started going downhill. I agree in the sense that is very much where things start to go drastically wrong. So it definitely makes sense.
Seriously wrong kind of thing. Everything up to that point could have been talked out. Everything after that point, it's like it becomes bigger than just a conversation.
Yeah, and I think the fact that obviously as part of that, Saif is in the car, and you can see that he's kind of thinking like, I think he says as well that I'm not ready, like this isn't what we need to do, but he's like not stopping Amin in his tracks.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, he just says, I'm not doing it. He doesn't say, I don't think you should do it as well. There's a different way. It's just, I'm not going to do it. And again, that just that little bit, it goes to show the sort of like almost selfishness of the two. Like, he's like, I'm not doing it. And Amin is like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And he goes out and does it.
It's interesting as well, because now I'm just remembering as well, obviously, when they have that little brawl at home, Saif is actually able to overpower Amin, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. And now I'm thinking, because at first I was like, oh, but what can Saif really do? But then actually it's like, well, actually he can overpower Amin, so he could physically stop him if he really wants to. Like, yeah.
Of course, he could, you know, he could have just grabbed him
Yeah.
and then just stopped him right there, but he doesn't. But he has the ability to, but he
Yeah.
doesn't. And again, it's just it purely is just one track mind characters who aren't sort of deviating from what they believe, even for the sake of each other.
One other theme or reoccurring thing throughout the film is this number plate as well, that obviously we see Amin's trying to sell it at the start, and then around halfway through, Saif actually finds it in like the trash sort of thing, and I gather that this was a private number plate that used to belong to the two's dad, and then it's actually the reason why Saif comes back towards the end of the film. So I was wondering, like, was there some kind of like symbolism behind that, or is it maybe like the one thing that's kind of actually drawing them back to each other? Like, what was the reason for including that?
The only thing it symbolizes was their father and the two's relationship with their father. Obviously, the father's not there, but there had to be some kind of presence from the father. And if you look at the number plate, is just a number plate. It could have been anything. But if you look at the way the two of them kind of had a deal with the number plate, it's almost like an extension of their relationship with the father. Like Amin's always trying to get rid of it. And then he said that towards the end as well, there's a line, like he says, the arrogance, we both know where you got that from. And he says, well, if I got that, what did you get? And he's like, well, nothing. That's what happens when you didn't get to know your father. And that's what it was. The number plate was just an extension of their relationships with their father. One comes back for his father because obviously he probably had a better relationship, and where the other one was trying to get rid of the number plate because that's something that he didn't want a part of.
Amin's dream is to obviously be able to buy this house eventually, and kind of like have his own little escapism kind of thing, whereas Saif's dream is purely, and it's actually as well, because you can see in his therapy sessions, the one thing that he, like, his reason to live essentially is his faith, and therefore he's kind of putting everything into this idea of renovating the local mosque. It's interesting as well because you see that both of them, although arguably Amin's dream is maybe a bit more materialistic, in the sense that he wants this house for himself, whereas Saif's dream is obviously a mosque for everyone to use, but both of them are getting money from it in nefarious ways. So I think it's interesting to see, like, it raises this kind of question as well of, like, is it okay to put money towards things, or like get things through bad means if it's for the greater good, sort of thing. That was one thing that got me thinking, especially the shoe scene, obviously, as well, where, because I was when he stole the shoes, I was fully expecting him to go and like sell them and then use it to put towards the mosque, but then we went and handed it to the homeless person. I was like, wow, like, he really is, like, this is a proper, like, philosophical conundrum in my head now, like, is this actually okay or not?
It's no different than Amin's character selling drugs to, you know, achieve his goal. To me, that was the biggest similar, like, in a sense, they both had the same goal. They both had the exact same goal. One wanted this big house and to get away from everything. The other one was building a mosque, and he was building something for the hereafter. They were both doing what they needed for pretty much the same goal. And both of them, in a sense, this was our motto throughout the film, was by hook or by crook, they both were just like, we're gonna do this no matter what it takes, kind of thing. Even if it means like stealing, or if it means getting money that's, from dubious sort of like means, and giving it to the greater good, kind of thing.
There was one scene where, that fighting scene, we did that on, like, I think it was like the hottest day of the year, and we were in this flat, absolutely roasting there for like, what, 10, 12 hours or something like that. It was the longest day of my life, but yeah, man. Like, I think obviously when you watch the film, you have your own inference from it because you've not seen what's gone into it. But I think when we did the cast and crew showing, like, obviously I was watching the film for what it was, but at the same time, I'm just seeing all these moments that we had together, and it was a really good time, man.
It was the hottest summer we'd ever had, hottest summer in the UK, and the peak of that summer, those 2 weeks, was when we decided to film, and like, which worked out perfectly actually, because it didn't mess with the schedule. There was no rain or anything, and we were able to get through these 2 weeks with no hiccups, which is crazy for, like, a micro budget independent film. Nothing kind of went wrong, but it was just, he's right. Like, I just remember being in that small room, Amin's bedroom, and it was the tiniest room. It was like a shoebox, and there was like, everyone was in there. There was about 8 of us in there, and we weren't allowed to open the windows because, like, audio reasons. And I just remember looking around at everyone, and like, I remember looking at Dan. He was the SAG, and he had this like big bead of sweat just dripping down his head, and I just remember thinking, you know what, like, this is crazy. And no one was complaining. And I just remember thinking, this is what I'm going to remember from this film in 10, 20, 30 years' time, that we were all just here. No one was complaining. Everyone was just doing what they're doing. Hottest day of the year. Ali always had to wear his big duffel coat. Same with Hamza, that big leather jacket. And I used to say to him, you know what, guys, you're going to miss this. As much as you hate it, you're going to miss it. But those are the moments, you're right, those little moments, that's what you think back on, and that's what you miss.
I mean, it's funny, you kind of have answered what I was going to ask, actually, which was, is there a particular scene that stands out to each of you in terms of whether it was particularly funny or favourite or challenging to film? So besides, obviously, the fight scene and the really hot scene that you've just talked about now, is there any other ones that stand out in particular to you?
Well, for me, it's that slap scene. Just when he gets absolutely leathered. But just because on the day when we were shooting it, right, I think I was like, I think where he could see, like, I was anticipating the slap. I knew it was coming. So then he took he took Hamza out for a minute to just have a chat, and he came back in. We ran the scene again, and Hamza just starts like pacing up and down and stuff. That's not in the script at all. So I'm just like thinking, like, when's it coming? Do you know what I mean? And I just, out of nowhere, I just feel like my cheek gets all swollen and red, and I was just in shock for like a good minute. I was like too afraid to move.
It was funny because like, Ali was like, how do you want me to react? And like, after the slap, and I was like, just do what you got to do, Ali. I don't care, just react. And then Hamza lays this like massive slap on him, sent him into the, like, last week. And then like, Ali just froze, and then everyone was just like waiting for him to do something. And it was like, don't cut, just stick with it. And he's just there for like 30 seconds, just looking off into space. I was like, how hard did Hamza slap him? But we didn't cut. And then that's in the film. He just freezes, and he's just like there. And it just worked perfectly, though. It just worked perfectly. That's a good scene.
From my aspect, how I remember that scene was, Ali didn't give you the full picture because we did about 10, 11, 12 takes of that.
Oh,
So
no.
we were literally, first Waheed was said to just do the pacing. And just before I'm about to slap this guy, Waheed said cut. And I was like, okay. Second time, third time, fourth time. About the fifth, sixth, seventh time, I'm starting to get annoyed now. I'm like, am I doing something wrong? What the hell's going on? And like the second to last time, or maybe 2 or 3 times before I actually did it, he called me out and he goes, I'm just trying to psych Ali up. Don't worry. You'll know when to do it. It'll be this one or the next one or whatever. And yeah, eventually we got to it. But at the time, I didn't realize it. Obviously, he's just trying to psych him out. But it psyched me out as well because I was like, I actually wanted to slap him by the end of that. Do you know what I mean? Because I was just getting so frustrated. But
Wanted to slap me, I think. More like.
yeah, but
But you know what? No, like seriously, these two are put through their paces, man. Like, I can look back on it sometimes. I think maybe I was like a bit too tough on them.
no,
But
I don't think so.
but at the same time, I always said to him, you know, like make the most of it because very rarely, like from here on in, hopefully it's just going to be like you're working your way up, you know, and very rarely you're going to have these interactions with a director. So it's like just make the most of it. But I did put them through their paces. I'm not going to lie. Like even the drowning scene with Ali, that was actually shot on the last day of shooting. So you can imagine, like we've just literally been through like 15 days straight of filming, and then the last, you know, Ali's last scene that he has to film is him lying in the bathtub, you know, underwater, and that wasn't easy. Ali can tell you that. Whenever anyone watches a film, the first thing they comment on is like the performances, the actors, and for me, like, yeah, if that's all anyone sees in that film is how good these performances are, then I'm happy because these guys earned it, man. Definitely.
It was really cool to watch it as well, like for multiple reasons. One being just because I'm not really like a film person myself anyway. Like I rarely have the patience to like sit through a film. So if I'm being completely honest, when I saw this and I saw it as like an hour 48, I was like, oh, okay, this is like proper, like, because I think as well, like when it was like oh, you're in a feature length film and it's at a film festival, I was like, oh, okay, cool, probably like an hour or something, and then it was nearly 2 hours long. I was like, okay, this is like proper, like getting into this. And I think you can really tell that it was done a good job of, I think, by the fact that I was very much invested in it and I wanted to like watch the end. I wanted to know what was happening, and the ending as well like took me a bit by surprise. I don't know why, like I didn't see that was going to happen, but I think I thought maybe that Amin would end up going to jail or something. I didn't realize, okay, wow, he's actually going to lose his life at the end of this. But yeah, definitely, like I think good performances from everyone, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the general public think of it as well. So obviously it's being shown at Manchester Film Festival, right?
That's it, yeah, 23rd of March, 1 o'clock.
Great Northern.
Great Northern.
On Deansgate.
There's tickets available as well, so yeah, if you just go on the Manchester Film Festival website and you can purchase tickets. They're selling out pretty fast, actually. So if you're going to get them, now's your chance.
Definitely, would definitely advocate going and seeing this film. And I think the thing, again, another thing that I really like about it as well is, although obviously it's got these themes that revolve around, it's obviously two young South Asian men who come from the Islamic faith. It's not exclusionary in any sense. You don't have to be from that background yourself to actually watch this film. Like, it's very much like you can watch and enjoy it and take from it no matter what your background is. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, credit goes to these guys for that. You know,
credit goes to the creator. He's too humble, man. Credit goes to the creator.
but like it's like a case of anyone can relate to the characters, right?
Because they're well written, bro.
But you guys perform. No one cares about what goes on behind the camera.
No,
like,
we do, man.
Everyone relates to what they see on screen. And you're right, it is a case of it's not just for a South Asian demographic. It's like anyone could turn up, anyone can watch this, find something that they relate to.
So if beyond the film or following the success of the film, people want to keep up to date with all of yours work, where's the best place for them to find you?
Probably Instagram, to be fair. AL1, AR5, HAD.
I'm a bit elusive. Like, there's nothing you'll find on me online much. So
you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Hamza Medley, HAMZA MEDLEY.
Sweet. And I suppose for Waheed, we'll just keep an eye out for the next projects coming out from you then.
Yeah, soon, hopefully soon. There's a lot of things in the works. So
how do you two feel about going to the festival? Like, how do you feel? Are you nervous? I'm nervous as anything, man.
I'm buzzing, man. I just can't wait to see everyone, like the crew and everyone. Just like see the vibes. Yeah, I'm buzzing.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to be there for to actually, like, you know, for it to hit me. But I'm excited. Definitely, it's gonna be fun, and enjoy it. You guys should enjoy it, man. Like, two guys from Manchester first ever feature-length film lead characters, and you got a film that's world premiering in your own hometown. Like, when is that going to happen again, man? I'm sure it will, but like, just make the most of it. Seriously, just make the most of it. Enjoy it. You guys earned it.
Thank you so much to the three of you for taking the time to speak to me today. It's been a pleasure. And for anyone that is interested from the discussion we've had today, hopefully there haven't been too many spoilers. Hopefully the public enjoys it as much as I do. So thanks to three of you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching.